Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Anne.
So Joyce and I are here because I wrote a post on Instagram saying that if I could give anything to adopted people, if I were a magic fairy and I could give anything to adopted people, I would give them a sense of self-confidence. And somebody wrote and said that she thought that what she needed even more than self-confidence was trust, a sense of trust. And that really resonated with me. Joyce and I have done a number of year-long groups together, and trust just keeps coming up. So I thought, let me ask Joyce if she would record some sessions with me where we talk about trust and adoption and adoptees. Um, so I looked up a definition of trust. And so one definition of trust is the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. And Joyce, do you want to talk about like what it's been like as for you with trust as both an adoptee and a therapist?
Sure. And I think this is a great project. And I think your person who said it should start with trust, it isn't so different because we're talking about trust in self, which you know is an important parallel. Um, I was lucky enough to study with Eric Erickson, who did a developmental chart and really thought about the developmental stages. And the first one is trust, mistrust. And so you can imagine that adopted people, for the most part, and there are some other stories in adoption, but for the most part, their life begins with a disruption, which causes a disruption in trust. And so it's not surprising that that's something to contend with, that not every human being has to contend with. Um, and so it's a good place to start. And we've spent a lot of time, as you said, in other groups, picking things that are true of adoptees that are highlighted in some way. But I think it's great to start with trust because it really is where the developmental issues begin.
Mhm. So when I was thinking of asking Joyce if she would do this with me, talk about trust, I had a problem. And that was that I had lied to her a long time ago. And I thought, well, can I do this conversation with her about trust and hold in my head this lie that I told her? And I didn't just tell it once. I mean, it was something I said a long time ago. And then it would come up just, and I would have to just pretend like it has been true for all these years. And I am in the Martha Beck Wayfinder life coach course. And so I've been really working with Martha Beck's books. And she has this book, The Way of Integrity. And, she told the truth for a year, no white lies, no nothing. And what she found, her life was, speaking of disruption, it was really disrupted. And she was more herself than ever. And so I decided I really want to be myself. And if there's a lie between Joyce and me, I can't be entirely myself because I'm myself with this lie. So it was a little bit of a risk because, maybe Joyce is going to say, that was really shitty. Like, mm. So I told her she had invited me maybe 15 years ago to do an event, and I was really excited about it. And at the very last minute, I realized I didn't even have enough money to get from the airport to wherever I was supposed to go. And I was so embarrassed and so panicked because who figures out at the last minute that they don't even have $20 in their bank or whatever, that I called her and I told her I had a kidney infection. And, I had that momentary relief of like, okay, I took care of that. Like I'm off the hook. But then I had that dirty feeling inside, of shoot, I didn't like that's not I saved myself, but I told a lie. And then I told Joyce. Joyce, what happened?
Well, there was a part of me that knew you were lying. And and yeah, I was disappointed. It was a really fun event, and you were a new friend, and some of my old friends who had done all our summer conferences in Provincetown, who were writers and who did writers workshops with me back in the day. And we were going to include you in and fold you into that. And we had rented a great space, and we had a whole thing. So it was very disappointing, and I knew there was something else. But my adoptee seeking mind said that it really wasn't that you didn't have enough money. There was something else going on, because we would have sent a car for you, we would have sent a person for you. And I think in some way you knew that was probably true. So, and it doesn't really matter, none of it matters, but it does, it is important to figure out how to be as honest as one can be. I love what you said about what Martha Beck did. And I did something similar to that many years ago. I decided that it was inauthentic not to just say what I felt, which is really dangerous because sometimes you're just talking trash. And I went through a phase where I just said what I felt, and I was very blunt. And I don't think that's the kindest way to tell the truth. So when you mention white lies, I think there are different categories of what develops more trust and what hurts more trust. And maybe later we can get into that. But I just want to highlight it while I'm thinking about it, because it's a funny business figuring out how to tell your truth. And is it your truth forever? Is it your truth for now? Is it a convenient truth? Is it, what does it mean in terms of the relationship that you're building or not building? So there are so many different aspects.
Yeah, and I want to get back to what you said about that part of me probably knew that you would come get me at the airport. And I think that is also where trust comes in, because I don't think I knew that. I think that I went to the story of I'm too much. She's already giving me so much by creating this. And then I'm going to have to face her saying, like, you've asked for too much. That's one step too far. Like, come on, you can't even manage this part. So I felt like a child, like I had failed like a child, and I was trying to cover myself up. And I feel like this is a major reason why adopted people lie, is because they have zero trust that it's okay to be them in the mental and physical state that they are. So they make up all sorts of stories to somehow be other, and not be this body that is in some ways struggling in a way that they think they should be.
I think that's true. I think little kids, little adoptees, one of the most frequently uh, described characteristics by parents or professionals is he or she lies a lot. And why not? I mean, we were lied to, uh, you know, as were our parents in many instances, but the lie just keeps going. And there is a way of trying to be good, and fearing that the other person won't really be there for you, or won't appreciate you, or won't love you anymore, or will reject you in some way. So I think this is a really crucial piece of understanding why adoptees lie, and and what it means to figure out how to be as truthful as is. I don't know what word to use here. As truthful as is real but kind.
What you just said about why not lie, Could we go back to that moment? Because I think this is incredibly important when you think about a little kid, and when we talk about how they were lied to, so many of us are, well, do you want to list like the lies that so many of us just come into this house with?
Sure. I mean, I think, our name, our background, our parents, our origins, so many stories are made up stories or inaccurate stories, chiseled to fit someone else's needs or wants. They're not truths. We're not given the availability of the true story. And it's supposedly done to be kind, to help us. The story might be too hard for a small child or whatever people have in their minds, what the agency thinks, how they make it appear to the parents. And I think a lot of people forget that adoptive parents are lied to also, but they propagate that lie as soon as they, if you're enfolding that child into your life, you should also enfold their truth and be the one to share that with them. So I think, there's a lot that's just set up to be not true and confusing. And little kids between 0 and 5, there's really not a lot of difference between reality and fantasy. That's why they have fantasy play and imaginary characters and they're supposed to. That shows their brilliance, their creativity. But if that's also their creativity is figuring out what the reality is and making it up, it lends itself to less fantasy and more reality of lying.
And it's complicated because if there's an adoptive parent talking to their friends, I don't think they would say, I lied to my child about their name, or I lied to my child about they would phrase it in a way that it was supporting the child. And so I think it makes sense for the child then to um the child wouldn't directly know these things, but somehow I feel like in my body, I felt like I knew it wasn't okay to lie, but that also that was a survival skill. Like it was okay because somehow it was okay. Like somehow there was a soft spot in logic that I couldn't have named at the time, but it almost felt like a duty to lie. Like if I wanted something, it 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 was worse to go without it than to lie and get it. And I'm curious about how we could maybe even change the word lie. This idea of creativity, like how do we have it so that parents don't panic when their children are lying because they think something morally is happening when the child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Working with families with little kids, that's a lot of what we did was to reframe things and to talk about fabrications and imaginary ideas. I think a lot of kids are, oh, I'm going to keep using lying just to not have several different ways, but we know that there are better ways to talk about it to help people to learn. I think sometimes you lie your way to the truth. And the only way you're going to get the truth is to move in that direction. And so I think it becomes second nature to some people, not everyone. Some kids find different ways to go about this. But a large number, a large enough number that it becomes noticed in the mental health field and in other fields, and in schools and in situations where kids are telling stories. And sometimes they need to tell these stories. Sometimes we're being very factual and we don't believe their truth because it isn't the fact that we know. But to them, it is. A silly example, I mean, not silly, but a lightweight in some ways example is that I was doing a journey map with a child once. And a journey map is working with kids to help them to tell you the story of what their journey was from when they landed on Earth to the present day. And this was a little boy who was adopted from Russia. And his parent, he did his whole journey map, and then we presented it to his parents. And he started out being in his orphanage, and he had his own room and he had special stuffed animals, and he was very happy. And his parents jumped in and said, "No, no, no, Dimitri, you were never, this was a giant room with 70 children, three in a cot. There were no stuffed animals. It was very sparse. That isn't how it was at all." And I just looked at them and said, "Why would you tell him that when he's created a wonderful memory of him taking care of himself and being surrounded by softness and
Mm.
having the space to, and yes, I mean, it wasn't the truth, but it's how he made sense of his truth, and it's what made him an amazing person. So sometimes lies aren't lies.
Mm.
Sometimes they're just your inner belief of what's true for you.
That's so powerful. And I was, as you were saying that, I was feeling in my body this like, there's also trust in the body. Like I'm 60 years old and I can feel that my whole life, my body has been unwinding so that I could finally be and live the truth. But like, I also had to trust my body. And I needed other people to trust around me that I am going through the process of being an adopted body in the world. And it doesn't look like for other people who weren't adopted, it's just not the same process. And I think that if there had been more of a relaxation around me and my process from mostly my parents, like why is she dropping out of school 3 times? Why can't she hold a job? That there's this trust also. I mean, I understand the anxiety, but I also understand trust creates a situation where you have to lie less.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's hard to get there. I mean, you don't trust automatically. I mean, some people do over trust
Mhm.
because they need to start out at that point, and they're more likely to get disappointed if they had, you know, given much more credit to a situation than was warranted. But I think trust takes time, and it it doesn't happen overnight. And in the case of adoptions, I think adoptive parents who have been waiting to start their family or to add to their family, when they receive this child, they think it's going to be automatic attachment. And it doesn't work that way. Attachment is different than bonding. Children bond physiologically only with their birth mother in utero. They attach to everyone else, their grandma, their dad, even their mom again on the outside. But attachment takes some belief that it's going to happen and you can trust that person. It takes time. I would always tell our interns and our therapists when I had my clinic, um, it takes about 6 months to even begin to have your
Mhm.
clients trust you. Because they would say, "Joyce, I feel like with these kids, I feel like I'm just playing and we're collecting insurance money for us to play." And I would say, play is the work of kids. You're working really hard and you're developing trust. You're there every week. You show up. You are giving them something and they're giving you something. You're learning about them. They're learning to trust you. This is how it goes until it goes deeper.
And it's so honest.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, I've noticed with myself and other adoptees, like there's this, like, oh, you're my new best friend. And it happens after 2 hours. And so relationships like that are really hard to support, and it's really hard to stay honest when you have assumed instant intimacy.
I think that's true. I just watched the Bob Dylan movie.
Oh, how was it?
I always forget the name of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's my era that I grew up in, and I didn't love it as much as a lot of my peers did, but it was good. But one of the things that relates to what we're talking about is at one point he was at an event with a beautiful African American woman, and they were leaving, and she said, "I love you." And he turned around, he was walking way ahead of her, and he was on his way somewhere else, and he turned around and said, "We just met." And so I thought that was very poignant because, whatever you think that is, you don't really know or trust the person at that point. And I thought that was interesting. I really, latched on to that moment and paid attention to it.
I think that's a good place to end this session today, because I think what you just said is so important, that I love you and we just met. I mean, that's for so many adoptees, that was how our world started with our adoptive parents, like them, I, I love you, and it hasn't been earned, or like our nervous system is so confused. And so like lies, that is also a lie. Like, and so lies become just a survival mechanism to this strange world where things are not what they seem. Um, I'd love to next time talk about maybe overtrust and how quickly. So do you want to, we'll meet next week and
Yes,
okay. Okay. And if people write to us and ask for us to cover certain things, we'd love that also. So
absolutely.
yeah, I appreciate this time, Joyce. This really means the world to me.
Me too. I enjoy talking to you about everything. And this is, I think, as long as we can, you know, enjoy the process for each other, but also help other people, I think that's a great feeling.
I think so too. Yeah. Okay. Have fun in the snow.
And you have fun in the rain.
Thank you.